Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/genre.
Over 180,000 titles to choose from your iPhone, Android, or Kindle.
That's audibletrial.com/GENRE. Weirdo bookworms unite! We want to share our love of genre fiction with you. Fans of horror, sci-fi, fantasy, and more can stop by as we chat about what we've been reading. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another installment of Genre Junkies. Hi, Scott.
Hi, Sandra.
So tonight is a very special night for multiple reasons. First of all, it's horror, which is my favorite. Yay!
Yay!
And secondly, this is a very special episode because we have a guest that we've never had on our show before. And this is our dear friend, Kelly, star of stage and screen, and writer and horror aficionado. Hi, Kelly.
Hi.
Welcome.
So much for having you guys. I am so excited to be on here. I am a Genre Junkies junkie.
Yay!
Yay, we're so happy to have you. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so, Kelly, talk to us a little bit about your love of horror, your history with horror, especially in regards to reading and now writing it. Tell us about your horror self.
You should see the grin on my face right now. I'm just thinking, how long do we have? This could a while. So you know, it's funny when I am someone who is very, very easily frightened. As a kid, I was always very easily startled and scared. So for a while, I wasn't as crazy about horror. But then there was just a turning point at some point in my life, in my childhood, where I started to just fall in love with ghost stories and all kinds of scary stories. I absolutely fell in love with scary stories to tell in the dark, as I'm sure most horror fans our age.
Hell yes.
Yeah, so there's definitely the beginnings there, as well as Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Yes.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And I'd say that was probably my initial introduction. And then eventually I started getting more into watching the movies. And my dad is a genre junkie as well. He's a big horror and sci-fi fan.
Hey, Dad!
Hey, Dad! Yeah, as far as reading goes, he loves Stephen King. And so growing up, I would often see, those books lying around the house. And I remember seeing It. Thinking, oh, what's this? And I started reading It when I was probably in 7th or 8th grade, and I'm sure most of it went over my head, but I fell in love with it.
Oh.
And yeah, so those were kind of my beginnings. It sort of started with books and TV, and then gradually grew into film.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I started out as a fan of horror, and then decided, hey, I want to be in it too. I want to make horror. Instead of being scared, I want to be the one who scares others. So,
oh my God. Yes, I think that's natural.
Yeah.
And I know that you've written a horror script, and Sandra's read it. I have not, because I was told I'm not allowed. But where did your idea come from to when you started writing screenplays to go with horror?
Yeah, so this was actually my very first screenplay that I've ever written. I've worked a lot in theater, film, and television, so I have read a lot of scripts. I'm familiar with kind of seeing the general format. And it really started out as just a challenge to myself to see, can I do this? I've always loved writing, especially creative writing, poetry, fiction, things like that. So I wanted to challenge myself and see if I could do it. And I wanted to explore nostalgia, which is something that inspires a lot of my writing.
Yes.
I was also, bring it back to It, I was listening to the audiobook of It.
Oh, I didn't know that, because that is a great audiobook too, for anybody that's not listened to that.
Stephen Weber, thank you for bestowing your vocal genius upon our lucky ears.
I couldn't have said that better myself, actually. So Bleed to Love Her is the name of your first screenplay. And it was recently, congratulations, entered into the famous Monsters of Filmland Silver Screen Fest Film Festival.
So exciting.
That's incredible, especially for your first script. I mean, obviously I'm going to say this, but I truly mean it. I really loved it. I thought it was really beautiful and powerful.
Wow, thank you.
Talk to us about the story a little bit.
So it really revolves around Caitlin, who is an 8th grader. She's 13. She is obsessed with Fleetwood Mac, and just Stevie Nicks is her absolute idol and goddess. And it deals with her exploring having a crush on someone in middle school, and the thoughts and feelings that come with that. And she also happens to be possessed by a demon. No big deal. Just that's middle school for you. It's a very innocent, sweet love story with some demonic possession, and kind of deals with Caitlin, the main character in the story. She has a crush on Chloe, another girl at school. And this was just something that I felt like I never really saw examples of this in the teen movies that I watched growing up. And I'm sure you can relate to this as well. But when we were in middle school and high school, it was right in that boom of all these teen movies coming out. I mean, every weekend there was a new, whether it was a gross out comedy or a slasher film, there was just onslaught of teen movies. And some of them were, really awesome movies, but I just didn't see really any gay characters as the leads. And I was just thinking, I'm someone who I was boy crazy in school, but I'm thinking, okay, if I was girl crazy, who would be the examples that I would, look to as far as, really sweet and innocent love stories? And I really couldn't think of any. And that disturbed me. That really disturbed me.
No, I think that's so important that you found a way to combine your love of genre with also wanting to put a feminist bent on things, and then also some diversity about sexuality in it. I applaud you.
Well, thank you. And then also there's a lot of religious themes in the screenplay as well, and that's another.
There are indeed people.
Yes, yeah. One of the leads is a Christian pastor, and I just felt it necessary to have a Christian character talking about homosexual issues and have it just be in a safe space and not be bombarded with these stereotypes of Christians that just hate all gay people and want them to burn in hell, Some pretty heavy stuff, but it's all framed with nostalgia. And I just wanted to reach out to people that grew up in the 90s and, what it was like being in love for the first time.
And the 90s was good, man. I know we were all pretty young, but the 90s ruled.
Yes. And there was some good horror in the 90s, too.
There was. And people a lot of the time like to skip over the horror literature and movies of the 90s, but they were really good. Now, Scott is afraid of possession, but I think he's still going to like this.
Okay. Well, then I will give him permission to read it then.
Woohoo!
Really? Yay!
I'm still in the process of submitting it to different festivals, just trying to get it out there. But
oh, nice. Good luck.
Well, good luck. Keep us updated on that.
Yeah, please. Your fellow genre junkies want to know. So what are you currently working on as far as anything in horror right now, or genre in general?
Yeah, so I actually recently started working on a short story collection. I've got I started one short story. I've got a couple poems that I might add in there as well, but I'd like to do a horror collection. And
yes.
Also kind of in the beginning stages of working on a horror series. Again, very, very early stages, so I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen with it, but I've got some cool ideas and I've talked to some amazing female talent that would like to help out with it. So,
oh my God, that's incredible. Are you kind of in sort of a YA horror thing, or do you have like more, or is it adult level too?
I think what I've been with the series idea is something that would appeal to teens mostly, as well as adults that, are horror fans as well. But I think with the short stories, I would like that to, appeal to different age groups. But the short stories, I think, definitely are a bit more female oriented, kind of have a more feminine kind of quality to them.
And that's what we love.
That's our secret focus of Genre Junkies, actually.
I love it.
It's true. As women in genre writing, we love to support the girl power in genre.
Yes, yeah. So I'm really excited about this short story collection, and I'm still very new as a writer. I've been a performer my whole life, and writing has always been more of a hobby. So, like I say, I'm not sure exactly what avenue this is going to go down. If I would self-publish or, how that would work, but we'll see what happens. Just throw it out there. And
well, you've got some press with the Genre Junkies.
Yeah.
So you can count on that.
You've got some built-in readers.
Perfect.
So we're going to go into talking about this book. But before we do, we want to tell you about some friends of ours at another podcast.
Do you like horror movies? So do we.
Plucks his little eyeballs out. Cuts his tongue out. She was great.
Do you like American Horror Story? So do we.
There were some butts. Yep. Killings. Yep. Butt. Yep. Killings. Butt. Yep. Killing. If it's over 90% cheek, that's your butt. You see the essence of the butt.
Are you into vampires dancing in mesh tank tops? Us too.
I was mesmerized by the mesh tank top and leather pants.
Are you into high-minded film critique and discussion? Because we've got that.
And it is beautifully filmed. Like, it really, just the stark contrast of colors, like you said.
Not your thing? How about a dick joke?
His dick, dude. He put his dick in a pig. Come on.
We've also got one dude to give dude perspective. Zombie apocalypse is no time to have your head in the pussy clouds, Mickey. This is survival.
Thank you.
So head over to iTunes or Stitcher, wherever you listen, and subscribe to The Bloodlust, your go-to podcast for classy broads and a token dude talking horror.
All right, my dears. So the title that Kelly, I want to say, challenged us with this week, we let her make the suggestion of a horror novel.
Make a suggestion ever again after this.
And to anybody who's read this book, I think they're going to know exactly what we mean.
The book is called House of Leaves.
It's by Mark Z. Danielewski. Now, just in case you're not familiar, let me give you a synopsis here. This is a multi-narrated story, first told by a character named Johnny Truant, a self-admitted, unreliable narrator who comes into possession of a manuscript by the now deceased older gentleman named Zampano. Zampano's manuscript is basically a study of a disturbing and mysterious documentary film called The Navidson Record. The reader reads Zampano's interpretation of the film, Johnny's notes and diary-like entries, and other additional notations from unidentified editors. I mean, it's really hard to synopsisize that book, but that's probably about as close as I can get to it.
That's about as good as it gets right there.
Thank you. It is hard to pinpoint my exact feelings on this book. Scott, you look like you want to say something, like you're bursting.
I do. I think I want to start the experience scores today.
Oh, okay.
Because I have to admit, I have not finished this book.
Okay. That's okay.
So to give my experience score, I have to explain the very first horror of this book for me. So the book's been picked. We have a deadline set. The box arrives, open it up, and what's inside can best be described as a textbook. And I opened to the first page of the actual book, and it is, in fact, margin to margin text. And that was a horrifying idea to me. We actually bought a second book to make sure that we had time to finish. So with that in mind, the only score I can give the book is a struggle.
Oh.
But I think part of that is I went about it wrong. This book has points in it that I truly was showing signs of true obsession with and joy at the way it was created, but it's not good on a deadline.
I can see that.
Yes, I totally agree. I first read the book about 10 years ago, and trying to reread it, I also did not finish rereading in time because It's simply not something you can read on a deadline. You cannot rush through this book.
Maybe it's not. I mean, I think I'm lucky that I had the time to devote to it in like big chunks. But I do like a challenge from a book. So I think I was just down for that.
Yeah.
And today I accepted that I just was not going to finish it in time. And I read it quite a bit still, but I took my time with it and I let myself just enjoy the way it was structured. And I started to like it a lot. So even though my experience with it has to be called a struggle, I think that that's not necessarily indicative of the quality of the book at all, really.
Yeah, that's so interesting that you say that, because I was thinking about the experience score and what my personal opinion would be. And I almost have to say it's an obsession that's disguised as a struggle, if that makes any sense whatsoever.
I love it.
Cool, because it is absolutely a struggle to get through, but for someone like me who just loves reading and writing and loves puzzles and brain teasers and things like that, that is why I got obsessed with this book.
I think that's actually a really great way to describe it, because for me, I had parts of this that was, a good read, a solid story, and I enjoyed opening up to it. And then I had parts of it that were obsession. It's so hard for me to say exactly where my experience lands in this too. I'm glad we all agree.
Yeah. And some of it really is a struggle. And a lot of it, you have to kind of question yourself. Is this a red herring? Is this a hint or a clue or an answer to some riddle? A lot of it, you might read through it and say, well, was there even a point to any of that? Or is that just just a total red herring? But then on the next page will be some beautiful poem that changes your life. And so then you go, okay, well, yeah.
Oh my God, that is so freaking true. And I guess we have to be so careful because we're not going to get into spoilers. So this section's actually going to be kind of brief until we jump to spoilers.
It is, because the experience of reading the book, I think, is a spoiler in itself.
Yes, in a way it is.
That's true. I think the best way to go into this book is, for lack of a better term, completely blind, which I don't want to get into too much spoilers, but blindness is a common theme in the book.
I feel like, Kelly, you've really studied this book.
This tome. It's not even a book. This is a tome.
It's a tome. You can't describe it as anything else. And I don't know if this is available as an ebook or as an audio, but I think you have to have this in your hands.
You have to have it in your hands. Absolutely. One question I wanted to ask you guys is, a lot of people call it a horror book. Would you call this horror?
I personally would not.
Oh.
Of course, I don't really know what I would define it as, but I think it is it's a study in alternative storytelling built around a horror trope.
For me, this book is horror. I think because it is.
Because it is.
Yeah, because it is. And Sandra said so.
Yeah, it touches on some extremely horrific concepts. And it leaves you feeling completely unsettled, disturbed, claustrophobic.
That's it exactly.
Questioning reality, how much scarier can it get,
I totally agree. Thank you for filling in where I'm lacking with my words, because that's pretty much apt. That's why I classify it as horror. There's certainly a sci-fi vein in there, I would argue. There's romance and, definitely some psychoanalytical stuff going on.
But yeah, it's hard for me to really put a genre on this book, because like I say, it has all these horrific qualities, but I don't know if I would call it horror.
Well, when I finally decided to accept the book as it was and experience it the way that I feel it should have been experienced from the beginning, I had a moment where it almost felt like I was Bastian poring over the never-ending story.
Ooh.
Okay, I kid you not. I have a notepad in front of me, and on it I wrote never-ending story.
That is amazing. There's this moment when you get absorbed into it, and there was a couple of moments when I felt like I was making a discovery, a connection that no one else had caught before.
Yes, this is totally. So I wrote this note because I was thinking about this is totally for kids that grew up reading the Never-Ending Story and thought this is the coolest, this is the coolest book I've ever read. This is what they read when they're grown up and jaded and have been through all of life's storms. And you start with Never-Ending Story, you get to House of Leaves.
Exactly. Then you experience some hardships and true horror in life, and you end up in the House of Leaves. Okay, now before we go to our spoiler break, I need to hear from each of you. Where do you land on an appeal for this book? Like, who is the audience?
So I would have to say the appeal for this book is the niche within the niche. I specifically recommended this to you guys because I knew you would be part of that group, the few, the proud, that would appreciate something like that. Like I say, this is for the outsiders out there who would rather be solving a puzzle than watching reality TV. For the kids who grew up inspired by brain teasers and riddles and would rather be in your room reading and writing than outside playing with your friends. Okay, I'm getting a little intense here, I know. Long story short, I'm going to give this a hardcore niche appeal score.
I agree. It is definitely hardcore niche. I don't want anybody who's remotely curious about this book to be afraid. I want you to be excited by this gauntlet that we and the author is throwing down for you. Are you the niche of the niche? And I think this separates people because this book, as if you look around reviews, it is polarizing. And I think it's an incredibly exciting thing for people who love genre books to read and experience and find where they land in this discussion. And that is what makes art good, is it should be polarizing. It should make people feel feels.
I think that it is a polarizing book, but I actually disagree with both of you.
What?
I actually am going to give this a general appeal score.
Explain.
My initial thought was going to be niche because horror is very hard to get out of that category, but this is so unique and so interesting. I think that this might appeal to people who aren't into horror more than people who are into horror. I think that this is a book that people who like to read and don't come at it with a deadline, I think this is something that they could very easily pick up and pore over for weeks and really appreciate how unique the storytelling of this is.
I think that's a really good point. Yeah. Perfect. I mean, because I could see, someone who is very into classic literature, philosophy, psychology. I could see them really enjoying aspects of this book for sure.
I totally agree. And Scott, you may have changed my opinion on it because I guess part of that challenge aspect is I just want readers to read this book and see how they take it and how they interpret it and what genre it fits into for them.
Yeah, and I think also just to kind of step outside and looking at how we're viewing this book as people who might feel like outsiders or people who are, very much into the arts and, feel kind of lonely. I think a lot of times we like to feel like we're part of some kind of elite club, like a secret club, like, oh, we understand this book and you don't, because it gives us a chance to feel like, we are understood or we understand each other.
Yeah, having an agency. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think maybe there's part of us that's like, ooh, we don't want the masses to like this book because we want to stay comfortable in our little club. So thank you, Scott, for kind of opening our minds a little bit.
I totally agree. And there's a reason why it says in the beginning that this book, this tome, is passed around to people on kind of the fringes of society and kind of those who go against the grain. So yeah, it's certainly a great challenge. And we're going to talk spoilers. Kelly's going to stay with us. So we're going to take a quick spoiler break and be right back. Enjoying the show? Please like and subscribe on iTunes. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at Genre Junkies. And don't forget to visit the website, genrejunkies.com. Okay, everybody, welcome back to the spoiler section. I'm still here, Scott's still here, Kelly's still here, and we're gonna unpack this book. I'm gonna start us off, if nobody mind. Okay, so for me, what worked for me? The Navidson record itself, I freaking loved that story. That was the obsession part for me. I was eating the record with a spoon. Zampano's notes, beautiful. The crazy backward text, the upside down stuff, the weird endnotes. I mean, I haven't read so many footnotes since Lord of the Rings, but I loved that they were there. And I got the feeling, the impression that it's like, you're not actually supposed to read all of these things at once. Like, you're supposed to kind of go back and read these again. Like, there's so much going on. You can't actually get it all in one sitting, I think. The things that didn't work for me. Johnny Truant. I'm sorry, he didn't work for me. I found his tales of sexual pastimes and drug use were a tiring distraction for me from a story that otherwise compelled me. And when I go back and I think about his diary-like entries, and of course the letters from his mother, I love those. I just didn't want it in this book for me.
I loved the idea of truant, but I loved that because, as I've said many times before, unreliable narrators are my favorite.
Right.
And those sexual exploits, I don't think any of them were true.
Oh.
I really don't.
Oh.
The whole first quarter of the book, he sets himself up as a completely unreliable narrator, telling these incredibly just over-the-top stories.
Oh, yeah, his Fight Club stories.
Oh, right.
Exactly.
You know Johnny Truant reads Palahniuk. He totally reads Chuck Palahniuk. That's like...
So I felt that all of those, quite frankly, over-the-top sexual exploit stories were just as false as the ones that he was telling to Lude.
I see. What's your opinion on Johnny Truant, Kelly?
Well, it's interesting. When I first read this book, I was actually living in LA. And so all the references to Los Angeles and some of like the seedier sides of Hollywood really resonated with me. So I found it oddly comforting in a way. Just kind of the relatability. Not that I related to any of his stories at all, but just kind of the references to that seedier side of Hollywood. And I was working in the entertainment industry, and I still do. Yeah, so it was just interesting.
The other thing I really appreciate is my favorite part of the book is there's a footnote at one point after one of his stories that says, for more information, go to Appendix 2B or whatever it was, and it was letters from his mother. And that just completed his whole character for me. It gave me...
Yeah.
That was such a wonderful way to tell his early life. And again, set him up as an unreliable narrator, because you realize that some of the stories that he's telling his mother are fake. And it made me feel for him a lot more after I started reading that.
100%.
I'm curious.
I didn't do it the way you did. I read it after.
Oh, okay.
I didn't follow his appendices.
So you went from cover to cover?
Yes, I did. I went cover to cover.
Oh.
Maybe I did it wrong.
I don't really think there is a wrong way to do it.
Fair enough.
I really liked the whale's toe letters, especially when she starts writing to him in code.
What's with that?
Oh, for me, it was just so much fun. I was like, okay, let's get into this. I loved cracking her code, and it was just so like exciting and interesting to me.
This is a book that you really need to bring a highlighter and some of those Post-it note tags that you can label different pages.
Yes. Oh, this is probably the first book that I've had to have a mirror to read this book.
I had my mirror out to my makeup mirror, and I'm like, let me see this. Yeah, which is cool. I like feeling like a detective.
You know the squares where on one side the text is backwards and one side the text is forwards? I just want to go in there with an X-Acto blade and cut out every single one of those squares, because it would actually leave a gap in the book.
Ooh. I bet somebody's done it.
Oh, I'm sure. Have you guys seen the message boards about this regarding this book?
No.
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, there's like a whole section of the internet that's just message boards dedicated to this book.
Okay, I'm going down that rabbit hole.
That's a rabbit hole I don't know if I can handle.
And that's our personalities right there in a nutshell, everybody.
So I keep thinking about why I chose that term of relatability for Joni Truant. And I think some of it goes back to the incident he has, I believe it's in the tattoo shop, when he has that moment where everything, I don't remember what he refers to it as, but he has some kind of blackout, some kind of scary experience. Yeah, so he has the breakdown in the tattoo shop. And the way he described it almost sounded like a form of like a panic attack or derealization or some kind of depersonalization. And
Yes.
as someone who struggles with anxiety, I don't know if I entirely relate to his exact experience, but just the way he described those kind of blackout scenarios, it sounded like a type of panic attack to me. And that is something that I could relate to.
I can totally get with you and Johnny on that level as well. There is a human side of him that's very fascinating. And definitely, like Scott said, those letters makes him complete. And you're kind of like, I don't know if he's crazy. I don't know if he's lying. It's interesting that that's who the author chose to kind of represent the audience in this book.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it at the time, but I think that was deliberate by the author, because there are footnotes that describe in great detail specific anxiety disorders and mental disorders.
Yes.
And all the symptoms that they show. And so clearly the author really did his research on this. So that's really fascinating. That's really cool.
I think this book, like you said, there's message boards, there's all sorts of stuff out there. I think you really need to discuss this book with people.
Discussing it with others is almost like the group, going in and exploring the house together. It's
yes.
Exploring the kind of never-ending darkness.
So since that was my favorite part, the Navidson record itself, what do you guys take away from the Navidson record and Zampano? Do you feel that it's real? I feel that it's real. That it's a real phenomena that somebody made a film about, and in the pre-internet era, it's possible for it to almost disappear. What do you guys think? You bought in?
Yeah, I wanted it to be real. Not real as in it exists in this real world, but in the world of this book, I want it to be real.
Yeah.
I wanted there to be an actual film, and the family, I wanted them to be real. Yeah, I was in it.
I want it to be real in the world of this story as well. I like to believe that it was and that it really happened. I'll tell you what, though, I want them to make the Navidson record into a movie.
Yes. Oh my God, me too.
I applaud that.
Yes.
I mean, how does he write a found footage film better than most real found footage films? I don't understand that.
Oh my God,
oh
yes.
my gosh, yes.
I loved those characters, that family, the friends, Reston, the explorers. I loved that. It was scary and fun. And there's at one point in there a theory in the Ed Notes that was the theory I subscribed to, that the house reacts to you. I like that.
I think that was Reston's suggestion in one of the footnotes when it was happening, wasn't it?
There's so many footnotes. I don't know.
So many.
I just read that and I was like, yes, I'm with you. Yes.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
In regards to the footnotes, I think that's one of the reasons why you really have to approach this book however you want to, and maybe read it a second or a third time, because there's a point in the very beginning of the book where there's, 6, 7 full pages all about the goddess Echo.
Yes.
And it's fascinating, but it's not really relevant at all. I mean, it definitely has some tones that are appropriate.
Right. It's relevant in that the author put it in there for a reason.
Yes. And then at the footnote at the very end, Truant writes, yeah, really, you probably could have skipped all of that. I just decided to keep it in there for the last 6 words. I'm like, you son of a bitch.
Exactly.
And that was the moment when that was one of the moments that I realized, okay, I don't actually have to read everything word for word.
Right.
If it's not regarding the immediate plot of Truant or the Navidson report, then I can speed read this.
And you can go back, because you can always go back.
Right. It's not going to disappear.
I'm such a completist. Like, it's hard not to read every single word because I feel like, oh, what if there's like a secret hidden in there that I might miss if I try and speed read through this?
I'm so with you. And there were points when I felt like I almost missed a truant episode, if you will, because I almost didn't read the footnotes. And then as I was turning the page, I realized, oh, wait, that's in his font. And so I went back and I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I read that because that was really interesting. So there's little mind freaks in the book that make you question how you're reading it all the time.
That's totally.
I just love how this book is so much bigger than just the book itself, which is what the book is about a house that's bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. Oh my gosh.
And the way that the book is bound, the cover is a dust jacket, but it's too small for the book itself. I thought that was just so brilliant for the
I'm
topic.
just noticing this now.
Damn, good eye, Scott.
Yeah, the book itself has grown out of its own bindings.
You're so right. I mean, I am going to reread this book probably multiple times in my life. I'm probably going to fill up a notebook and be sitting in like a 24-hour diner sometimes, just like going over my notes and notes upon notes. And I appreciate that he put this book out there for people.
Yeah. And so do you know who Mark Z. Danielewski's sister is?
No.
Okay, it's the singer Poe.
Really?
Yes.
Oh
and
my God.
She has the song Angry Johnny.
Oh my God.
So now this book takes on this whole other level where now you have to go and listen to Poe's music to find other secrets about the book.
My mind is blown. So Scott's, I think he's hyperventilating.
I'm This is like some secret society stuff here.
Right?
This is Inception.
And I love that the brother and sister are in on it together because that is so something that my sister and I would do. Like, I love the sibling connection there.
Same season. I didn't even know it existed. And now that just added a whole other fun, cheesy top crust layer to this book.
So now we have to go and listen to her album, Haunted.
Gosh, you guys, I think we might be starting a cult on House of Leaves.
Yeah, we'll have a monthly episodic podcast on our House of Leaves discoveries and theories.
It could be done.
Track 8 is 5.5 Minute Hallway.
Whoa.
Wow. What album is this?
So the album is called Haunted. It came out in 2000.
Yeah. Oh my goodness gracious.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
I love how it becomes this whole interactive experience that, like I say, it's so much more than just the book itself.
It is. It is. And I feel like in a lot of ways, this book was kind of ahead of its time.
Yes, this is augmented reality.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, everybody. So, I mean, obviously, you could write an entire dissertation on this novel, unpacking it, discussing it, maybe teach a college course. I don't know. I think it's all very possible. Maybe there is a college course, but...
School for that course. I would do that.
Absolutely, right? Is it available online? So, Kelly, just give us, because you're the expert on House of Leaves among us, what should we use for our execution score object?
Oh gosh, something like how many endless hallways or spiral staircases. Or...
I think you hit the nail on the head. Okay, I'm gonna lead us off, and all right, for pure execution of something that I think was a brave book to write, an experience for readers, something that's reminds me of other things I've seen or read in genre. Even though everything didn't exactly work for me, there was so much undiscovered, unfamiliar stuff for me to experience in this book. I'm going to have to give it an execution score of 8 spiral staircases out of 10. I'm going to pass it to Scott.
Well, by all rights, since I read this book wrong and didn't finish it, my official score to go on to the record has to be the very embarrassing I for incomplete.
Oh.
If I have to score it based on what I have read now, and specifically on my experience with it today and how I feel about it today because I finally accepted it for what it is, I'm very tempted to actually give it a 9 spiral staircases out of 10. The author had a very deliberate vision for what he wanted to do, and he executed on it admirably. There's not much else to compare it to. which works in its favor.
Yes.
So as it stands, I don't know how he would have done it any differently because it is so unique. Kelly?
Yeah, I am just in awe of all the work and research that went into creating this augmented reality reading experience. You guys hit every nail on the head. There's not much more I can add. I have to give it an 11 spiral staircases out of 10 because my experience score is bigger than the score system itself, much like the Mic drop.
I like it. Mic drop moment.
I'm just completely in awe of all the work that he put into this book, researching the footnotes, because I mean, to my knowledge, a lot of these footnotes are referring to actual works and, real existing authors. And I'm just amazed at all the references he makes. And I'm so thankful to the publishers for being okay with making this book. Like, oh, hey, can you make the word house, every time it comes up, can you just make it blue?
Right.
Oh, by the way, can you type this backwards? Props to the publishers and editors for doing all that and bestowing this beautiful experience on us. I have to say, one of my final thoughts, one thing that sticks with me more than anything in this book would be the poetry. I think this is some of the most beautiful poetry I've ever read. It really touched me, hit me in such a way. Poems like That Place, the one that talks about the kids in the summertime and a dragon-like monster. Untitled Fragment, the poem that begins with the angles of your wrists preserve a certain mystery. That's one of the most romantic things I've ever read. I should probably mention that one of these poems was actually used in my wedding vows.
Are you serious?
That's not hardcore House of Leaves fandom. I don't know what is. So my dear husband, Brent, who is just the most wonderful man in the world, love of my life, complete soulmate, dream guy. We used the poem "You Shall Be My Roots" in our wedding vows. And well, if I could certainly read that to you. So this was the poem that was used in my wedding vows, called "You Shall Be My Roots." You shall be my roots, and I will be your shade, though the sun burns my leaves. You shall quench my thirst, and I will feed you fruit, though time takes my seed. And when I'm lost and can tell nothing of this earth, you will give me hope. And my voice you will always hear, and my hand you will always have. For I will shelter you, and I will comfort you. And even when we are nothing left, not even in death, I will remember you.
Applause.
It is so beautiful.
It is beautiful, and that speaks to the romance of the book, and it certainly speaks to your super fandom as well.
Can you tell I'm a theater geek? Have I not made that clear enough yet?
Well, oh my gosh, Kelly, thank you so much for bringing this book, not letting me have any more excuses to not read this book and bringing it to Genre Junkies. And thank you for sharing your thoughts and being here with us tonight.
It's such a pleasure. I've been waiting for about 10 years to find someone to discuss this book with, someone that I actually know, not just anonymous internet message board people. I bring it back to, I mentioned about my dad earlier, kind of introducing me to horror books. I actually introduced this book to him, so I got him to read it too, which was fun. Yeah, there aren't many other people that I could talk to about this one with. So thank you for being up for the challenge and just rocking it.
You got it. Thank you.
Kelly, so where can people find you on the interwebs?
So you can find me on Instagram at The Hitwoman, TheHitwoman. I do have a Facebook page. I believe it's just facebook.com/Kelly Hitman, though I tend to be more of a visual person, so I tend to be more on the Instagram side of things. And come see me this summer at the Raven Theater in Healdsburg, California, where I will be in the musical Shrek.
Yay! Well, we'll certainly be there, and then everybody else should come check it out too, and you get to meet some genre junkies.
Yeah, we'll just buy out the whole theater one night, all the genre junkies.
Exactly. Shouldn't be a problem.
Okay, that'll make my day. That would be amazing. Yes, we open June 22nd, and you can buy tickets at raventheater.org or at the theater itself.
Beautiful. All right, guys. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Sandra, I guess. And thank you, Kelly.
And thank you, Kelly.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys so much for having me. This has been such a joy to unpack this beast of a I was gonna say novel, but what do we even call it?
A tome.
A tome. Thank you for just exploring this tome with me, going on this journey.
Well, thank you. And thank you to all of our beautiful listeners out there. And I gotta say it, please keep reading past your bedtime.
Okay, did I said experience score? Is that the right term? Did I call it the right thing?
Beautiful.
You're fine,
execution, shoot, execution. Should I try it again?
What did you call it?
Experience.
I said experience instead of execution.
That's
It's fine. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
I think you did it
It's
beautifully.
cool.